Greetings, my friends. Welcome. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach, and I want to welcome you to Magnificence in Motion. Today, this is episode number 13. My title for today is Guardians of Children's Magnificence. I don't know where that title came from, but I sure love it. Have you ever noticed how grandparents seem to have a magic touch with kids that parents maybe have a little trouble figuring out? Well, you know, it's funny, by the time we become grandparents, we've hopefully stopped sweating the small stuff, like whether little Timmy eats his broccoli or if Susie's socks match. We've lived long enough to know what truly matters. And that wisdom changes how we interact with children. But here's the catch. Many parents and grandparents today are struggling. Parents are drowning in social pressures, helicopter parenting, competitive academics, social media comparisons, while grandparents often feel maybe sidelined or unsure of how to join in without overstepping. Now, what if we could bridge that gap? What if we could help both generations recognize that the real job isn't to fix kids, but to see them, to witness and nurture the inherent magnificence they already possess? If we could do this, then perhaps we'd be helping the next generation to carry the knowledge of who they really are throughout their lives. You know, science backs this up. Studies show that children with strong grandparent bonds have lower rates of anxiety and depression, better emotional regulation, and even higher academic performance. Grandparents often provide unconditional love without the day-to-day pressures of discipline and logistics. They're the keepers of family stories, the safe harbors when life gets stormy. And to be honest, the ones who sneak the kids extra cookies when mom isn't looking. Neuroscience tells us that secure, loving relationships in childhood wire the brain for resilience, empathy, and self-worth. So when we dismiss grandparenting as just spoiling the grandkids, we're missing a huge opportunity. This isn't just about fun and games. It's about shaping whole human beings and preparing them for a fulfilling life as all of who they are meant to be. So for today's episode of Magnificence in Motion, I'm joined by the delightful and ever-wise Course in Miracles leader, Laina Orlando, who brings just amazing beauty and a lot of love for her own grandchildren right here to this program. So Laina, come on camera, let's say hello, and we'll get going on this beautiful, beautiful topic.
Oh, what a great introduction. That was so fun.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really a great topic, and it's a little bit different from the kinds of topics I usually have on this program, but you know, I think it's really important. I mean, we are in a way the guardians for the next generation. I think we do have an important role to fulfill and maybe to help encourage them in some way that we maybe haven't been doing as much as we should have been over the past many, many years, I guess. So I know that you've got a couple of grandkids now, and this has given you a whole new perspective. Share a little bit about why this topic is so important to you.
Oh, this topic has become not only important, but it's setting the stage for how my purpose on this planet is shifting. And yes, I have two grandbabies. I have a 4-year-old grandson named Ryder. He's the one who made me a grandmother. And being that I'm Latin, my daughter wanted Ryder to call me abuelita, which is grandmother in Spanish. But he couldn't get abuelita out, so he calls me abue, which is adorable. And then about a year and a half ago, well, exactly a year and a half ago, my granddaughter was born. And Ellie, she can't quite say abue, so she calls me Abba. But I'm sure that's going to morph into abue. And it's just so sweet, because just in their naming me, it taught me that names are irrelevant. Labels are really meaningless, and it doesn't matter. We make up names, and I've never been called anything more sweeter than Abwe or Abba. And, so they definitely have taken me on this incredible journey of detaching But let me share a sweet story about Ellie. So Ryder was born during the COVID time frame. He was born at the hospital, and my daughter had a very a relatively good experience. He was born healthy, but he was born in a hospital setting, and everything was so sterile and controlled, and you got to give him shots, and you got to do this, and you got to do that, and we got to take the baby from you right when it's born and separate it and go cut the cord and do all these things. Well, my daughter is on her journey to awaken, to understand so much about the system. And, so having a baby was a very important part of her learning, that she's got to speak up for what really matters to her. So there were a lot of things in the hospital she couldn't get them to not do because they had their agenda. And as a mother, as a new mother, she had done studies, research, and wanted things a certain way. So she decided, well, you know what? With my second child, I'm going to have a home birth. I'm not going to have the sterile environment. I'm not going to have the hospital in the way of what I want to do with my child.
No.
So Ellie was, we were planning for a home birth, a water birth, and met with the midwife, Shauna, a fabulous, wonderful lady who'd been doing this for a long time. I actually didn't realize, but she'd been doing this for like 20 years up here in the Rocky Mountains, and there's a lot of home births. It was really fascinating. So the morning that Ellie decided to make her grand entrance on March 4th, she came in about 1:25 in the morning. We had a really big storm, and Shauna couldn't make it to the house. Everything was happening really quickly. We couldn't even get the water pool set up. So I literally delivered my granddaughter on the carpet on the floor of my daughter's bedroom with my son-in-law on the phone with Shauna telling me what to do, because I never birthed no babies. If you remember that line from Gone with the Wind. And anyhow, so I have a very special bond with Ellie because I'm the first human that ever touched her, that welcomed her into the world. And
Nice.
I didn't realize how special that is. And when we give that privilege to a doctor that you hardly see, or to a nurse or somebody else in a hospital that will never have a connection with your child, I realized, oh my gosh, if you can have a home birth and nobody else interfering, do that. I'm grateful for hospitals because I have, know plenty of people who've had complications, and the hospital is an important place to be for certain things. But if you have a relatively natural pregnancy and most births, it's natural. It's a natural thing. That baby's going to come out. That's going to happen. But if there are complications, yes, I'm grateful for doctors and nurses. But David, there was probably, other than giving birth to my own children, being there for the birth of Ellie is life transforming.
Absolutely.
Shifted me.
Yeah. Well, I was present for the birth of all three of my children. So I know exactly I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but I know how it felt for me to be privileged enough to be there during those experiences. But I was not present for my grandchildren's birth. And so it's a different, I don't have that experience that I can compare to. But I think, you said something that I think is really important. If you think about it, how long have we been doing hospital births? It can't be more than 100 years, and for tens of thousands of years before that, we were giving birth naturally. They probably never even heard of a midwife. I'm sure they had people in the communities who would help out with the birth and all the rest of this. But most of these births worked out just perfectly.
Yeah.
Since when do we absolutely need a hospital in the way to do all this? Well, I know why we need it. It's because they want to, puncture your baby with all these things and put all kinds of, let's just say substances into their body. Substances which now we're beginning to know, many people have known this intuitively anyway, are just not healthy for these babies.
Yeah.
and maybe causing all kinds of other problems that we don't even notice until they're into their teens or even later in life. So yeah, I'm all in favor of 100% natural birth. They've got people like, these midwives are one group, and then doulas the other group. And all of these people are well trained in how to deal with, these potential complications that you talked about. They don't require a doctor. And cesarean sections are not really required very often,
Yeah.
pretty rare. So I don't know. I guess I have lost faith in the so-called medical profession. It's not really a profession anymore. It's more a business. And, I've just kind of lost faith in that. So I'm all in favor of all natural all the time, as to the maximum extent possible. That's my feeling. So that's it, the end of my little political rant.
No, but that ties though to how to guard our children's magnificence, because you and I have been teachers for well over a decade each, of reclaiming our magnificence, reclaiming the truth of who we are, doing the inner work, the coaching that we offer, the teachings that we offer, of remembering who we really are, of having people come back to the place of acknowledging that innate perfection that is already within us. The same needs to happen for the physical vessel, the body. We need to preserve the physical vessel, because that is what is part of housing the magnificence of our souls for this particular incarnation, for this journey. So the process that I am finding myself in now as a grandmother is really, I have so much more awareness of the ways that we have polluted our bodies. As a parent, I did not know that. I trusted the establishment.
Yep.
I handed my babies over and said, from the minute they were born, here, you put in them whatever you think they need to have in them. Never understanding what has happened to the consciousness of humanity. Now that I am a grandmother, now I see what has happened to the consciousness of humanity, which is basically, I'm going to separate everybody into two groups. All of us completely unconscious to the truth of who we are as a divine being that is powerful beyond measure and is designed to live as an expression of love. We all forgot that. But I'm going to divide everybody into two categories. Those who forgot that and really did not know any different. I mean, we really have been under a trance, and those who forgot to be the presence of love, but understood the power of controlling a mind. And that group that understands the control, how if you control somebody's mind and have them believe that they are, free to make their own choices, but you limit the choices that they get to make, they're under a trance that allows them to really give up completely their innate God-given power. What is happening to that second group is that we're beginning to wake up. We're beginning to realize, wait a second, there is something innately good about me. And they're doing the work. You and I have done it. Again, we help so many people do that. And I see Stacy here. Thank you, Stacy, for being here. You're a grandmother, so you understand what I'm talking about here. As we reclaimed our own magnificence and came to the place of realizing how holy we are, how divine we are, how utterly perfect we are as God created us, we're waking up and seeing, I don't need somebody else to control my mind. And that to me is what's so exciting about being a grandmother, because I couldn't do that I couldn't protect my children from the establishment because I was under the trance. However, because I was their mother and I began my awakening while they were still younger, watching my daughter, my only daughter, I've got two sons and one daughter, take some of that knowledge and begin to go down the rabbit holes that have allowed her to do the research that helps her see who is attempting to control her and control her body, and knowing that she did not want to do that for her kids is what has been just a wonderful opportunity as a grandmother to respect her choices, to be there as one who is there as a support person. And yes, like you said, I sneak the cookies and do some of those things. But for the most part, my daughter is doing such a conscious job in raising these grandbabies that I am thrilled to be a participant whenever she asks, Mom, what do you think? You know, did I handle that? You know,
Right.
what was I too lenient? Was I too aggressive? So we have this beautiful ability to share where I know my role. These are her kids, but
Right.
I get to share some of the wisdom that I have gleaned through this incredible journey. And it's exciting to see that what she is doing is the opposite of what I did. And we can get into that a little bit more, because that really is the crux of becoming a conscious grandparent, is to understand that what we did, although I'm not going to call it wrong because it's all that we knew to do, is very different than what some of these more conscious parents are doing in order to help raise really the generation that is seeding what I have learned from A Course in Miracles is really heaven on earth. Course calls it a happy dream. We should all be able to live happily ever now in this reality, while we are still inside of the dream of separation.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with believing we're separate from one another, but there is a whole more joyful way of living inside of that separation if we know that we're all so connected, that we're part of oneness, that we were designed to be loving to one another. So good times ahead.
Yeah, I think, well, one thing I want to distinguish here, you know, it's true that we are talking about the guardians of children's magnificence. We're focusing our attention on grandparents. But the fact of the matter is, and you said this already, every single one of us is born as a divine, magnificent, unlimited, sovereign spiritual being of light and love. Every single one of us has that power within us. And even today, in this so-called enlightened world that we live in, people are still caught under the trance of trying to do what society wants them to do, trying to live up to the expectations of some external set of rules. And those who don't cooperate with that kind of situation are often shunned or punished, or even worse. I mean, there's worse kinds of stuff that happens to some of these people. And so it really is difficult. We are strongly encouraged by external forces to fit within that box, to stay within those very narrow boundaries. And so it's a challenging aspect of life to appear to stay within those boundaries in order to protect your physical presence, while at the same time allowing your soul and your mind to expand beyond those boundaries so that you can begin to experience all of who you are. One of the things that I've noticed about reaching what I'm now calling the age of maturity, well, even though I don't consider myself to be a fully matured individual, reaching the age of maturity is that I am now much more aware of all of that. And I have also reached a point where I really don't care whether people like that I kind of stray outside the bounds or not. I've reached this point where I realize it doesn't matter. What really matters is that I acknowledge, express, experience, and share the full truth of who I really am. That is what's important. In fact, there's nothing more important than that. And this is something that I have come so strongly believing now. It's something that I'm trying to press down into my children and into their children. Let's get that message down there as early as possible so we can have less and less of this separation / control model that you were talking about, which is 100% ego mind based and has nothing to do with the spirit at all. So it's interesting to me that, you know, You and I have been on this journey for quite a long time. My only regret is that I didn't start it sooner. And yet at the same time, I realized that if I had started sooner, all of my life would be different than it is now. I wouldn't necessarily be in the place that I am right now. I wouldn't necessarily be able to share the wisdom that I can right now. So maybe I don't really regret it. It's one of those, sometimes I regret it, sometimes I don't kind of things. I'm sure you've had that experience yourself. But anyway, this is a fascinating topic, and I really love that we're talking about guarding something so important as children's magnificence.
Well, and that really is the whole point of the awakening that we have had at the time that we had it, allowed us to be at the stage that we're at now when we have these grandkids. And I see more and more of especially students that I've worked with that have been on this journey. I've been teaching almost 20 years. So I've seen people who've been on this journey for a long time, especially those who've been with me for years, and they're shifting. A lot of them started with me before they had grandchildren, and some are having grandchildren. And the fact that you and I have been coaching, and we are two of millions of coaches on this planet now that are helping people remember the truth of who they are. So that means we've got millions of people who, if they're not already grandparents, they are becoming grandparents. They are going to be grandparents in the very near future to a generation of children who are coming in at a higher frequency. That's a whole different conversation, but the planet's frequency is ascending because we are waking up, and if we look at every single one of us as a light bulb on a dimmer, we all dim down, but there are millions who've been turning the dimmer switch up, and we're becoming lighter, meaning we're understanding the truth more. So the planet itself is being bathed in this light that is emanating from those of us who know the truth, which is why we're seeing so much of the corruption and the divisiveness of programming. We can see it more clearly because there's more light with which to see that which was in a dark room before. So as we turn up our light, these children are being born in an environment that is already of a higher frequency. That higher frequency means that so many of at least the grandparents have done the work. Many of these parents have already somewhat of a attitude similar to yours. I'm not raising my children so that the government can tell me what to do, or so others can say, oh, she did a great job. A lot of these parents today that I'm observing, the more conscious ones, they're not using their kids to get likes on Facebook. As a matter of fact, my daughter will not allow her children to be on any kind of social media. So people hear that I'm a grandmother, but they're not going to find too many photos of me with my grandkids because she just won't allow it for many reasons that she won't do that. And part of it is her own, I believe it's her own discipline and not looking for the outside to approve what she's doing as a parent. Right. And inside of that attitude is also the attitude of she recognizes these kids are whole, perfect, and complete. Something that she heard me say to her so much while she was going through her tumultuous teen years, where she was lost in what people thought about her. And she was discovering what I was saying to her. No, the perfection is already there. So now as a team is how I see it with her and her husband. We know these kids are already perfect. We are not deluded into thinking that we need to help them become better than who they are. We are conscious enough to recognize that perfection is there. It's so obvious. These little babies are so joyful. They're so living in the moment. They're so clear about what they want. I mean, my 1.5-year-old granddaughter Ellie, she is really, her personality is starting to blossom, and it is so amazing. She is very certain. If she doesn't want something, she lets you know, and very clearly with it's like, no. She can't say the word no yet, but and she'll do her hand motion. Is like, no. Do I want milk or no? So there is a respect for what these kids want that is really amazing, while at the same time there's a guidance, something I did not do with my children that my daughter does. As an example, when my kids were little and they wanted, I loved cooking, so I always made healthy foods overall. And whenever they wanted dessert, it would be, yes, you can have it after you eat your food. Or if you wanted the candy, most of the time I'd give into the candy because, keep them quiet and I can get something done. My daughter, on the other hand, is so clear about teaching, specifically Ryder, and I know it's going to happen with Ellie eventually, that he gets to pick what he wants to eat, with the understanding that there are certain things that he needs. He needs protein. He needs, the vegetables and the fruit, and there has not been any forcing him to do it this way or that way, but rather encouraging him to choose the things that are healthy for him, because she has broken that down for him, not thinking that a 3-year-old was not smart enough to understand protein. So she teaches him about what is protein and this, that, or the other. These kids love fruits and vegetables and are so open to trying new things. The other day, Ryder was with me and he asked me, he said, Abby, can I have one of your cookies? Because I keep a little box of goodies here that I don't eat that many sweets, but every now and then, if I want a cookie, I want a specific kind of cookie. So he said, can I have one of these cookies? And he said, but I know I've got to also have some protein, but when I get back to my house, I'll eat the protein, but can I have the cookie now? And that level of consciousness is so beautiful to see, that there is a connection being made in maintaining the body healthy, which means his mind understands more so than my kids did, or I did, or my parents did, that if we're going to introduce anything foreign into the body, he's already establishing an awareness of the sacredness of the body, of the importance of well-being, that he's going to be making probably very different choices than her mother or his uncles did in taking in substances that are not healthy, or be it legal or illegal. So it's really cool to watch that level of consciousness.
It's pretty fascinating for sure. I love hearing that, because that's the kind of thing that I wish I could have. I wish I had done it myself on many levels. I mean, you mentioned about the little kid saying no, and I remember as a parent with young 2-year-olds, 1-year-olds saying no to me, how much my hackles got up, and there was that part of me that just wanted to be in control. I recognized that. And at the time, of course, it was, you're wrong, I'm doing it my way. That was my attitude. And as I think about it now, I realize I learned that from my parents. Mm-hmm. My parents were the ones who taught me that. My parents were the ones who said, you don't do what I do, you do what I say. When I say it. My mom was like, God bless her, she's gone. But my point is, she did the best she could with the information that she had at the time. She kind of passed that on to me. And at some point along the way, I started giving in a little bit. And I remember I say, okay, I don't really like having these arguments with my kids. Maybe there's another way I can communicate with them. Make a deal. Well, you can have this or you can have that. Which one's it going to be? And so I opened up that much. Not very much, really, in the grand scheme of things, but enough to start to begin to understand that these kids, they have a mind of their own. They have personality of their own. Now, that was me in my early mid-20s. With my kids, just little kids, little babies, and having no clue how to raise them. So to hear you talk like that and to hear that your daughter has that much awareness, it just brings warmth to my heart and makes me think, wow, if I could go back and do it again, that's kind of how I'd do it. You know,
Your
that's
next reincarnation, you'll do it differently.
that's right. Yeah. It's fascinating to me that, you know, we all, I guess we all in some way or another go through these kinds of awakenings and changes and learning new things and making new decisions. It's a wonderful journey, really.
It is a wonderful journey, and it's so exciting to see that, because the awakening that really got activated, I'm going to say so many in our age group that now are moving into, being grandparents, really has set the stage for so many things that are changing. The education system is changing. Anything that supports this idea that something external knows better than we do is changing. The government, the media, the education system, the medical system. I as you know, because you and I were on the same side during the pandemic, I am not going to have somebody tell me that they know better for my body than I do. That's just not going to happen. But that is a recognition of the innate intelligence and magnificence of who I am, a training my mind to come to know what God is, so that I would know the real God, not the God of indoctrination in the church, but what is God? Thankfully, Course in Miracles has helped me really understand what that is. And it is nothing but this intelligent consciousness, this intelligent, call it energy, that is what all of us are powered by. Yeah, when somebody dies, there's a body there, but where's the consciousness? Well, it's that energy that is no longer there because that body is no longer animated. Well, what is that what is it that animated it? Creating a relationship with that and knowing we're made in the image of that is part of the evolution of humanity. The revolution that is taking place with so many saying no to external authorities is coming from a connection that we have made, a remembering of that inner authority within us. And if, as a conscious parent or grandparent, you already know that child is powered by that same consciousness, is powered by that same innate knowingness. So how can I know better than it? All I can do is, you used the word maturity earlier. All I can do is, because of my level of maturity, having been on this planet, is recognize that my grandkids have the same access to the all-knowingness of the Creator as I do. So I cannot know better than they do. However, I've lived on this planet a little longer, and I know that if you put your hand on the hot stove, it's going to hurt. So I offer guidance, but no longer from this diluted place that, grandma knows best, because I watched the show Father Knows Best, and I grew up like you, do as I say, not as I do. And then I got to question a lot of those double standards that my parents had and my grandparents had. And it's so, for me, it's a really exciting time to see that there are more parents that are willing to do things differently. But there isn't something I want to make sure we talk about, and that is utilizing this relationship as an opportunity to continue to do my own inner work. Because if I have an irritation, if I have a reaction to whatever is happening, I've got to bring it back to me. Where before, if I had a reaction, I needed to make them stop doing what they were doing, and be the controller, and I'm the person of authority, and not do that with my daughter or my grandchildren. So grandparenting doesn't end the learning. It takes it to a whole nother level.
Right. Well, you're talking about the distinction between grandparenting and grandparenting, which is what I think we're trying to lead up to here. And you and I have, we're very much on the same wavelength, but we just have slightly different vocabularies. You have a certain way of describing things that I resonate with a whole bunch, completely. And yet I know that my own way of describing those same things would involve different words, perhaps different concepts, different different ideas. For example, you talk about God. I have chosen not to use the word God in my conversation anymore because that word has been so, what's the word, corrupted in our culture and in our mental awareness. You know, you talked about the God of the physical world, the God of religion, and unfortunately, that is the one that keeps coming to mind when I hear that word. So I have chosen a different word. I chose the word omnitude, meaning all that is. And, you know, you talk about consciousness and supreme consciousness and all the rest of it. I agree with you 100%. All of us emanate out of that consciousness and somehow emerge into this physical world and then have our temporary human experience. And then we kind of fade away back into that consciousness, leaving behind perhaps some leftover energy that no longer appears to be animated, but is still a part of consciousness. You know, that dead body that we leave behind is still formulated out of the same stuff, the same energy, the same consciousness. It's just that the active portion of the consciousness has decided to move on. So, you know, we have different ways of saying things, and I love that because it means that you're going to be attracting a certain group of people to talk to, and I'm going to be talking to maybe some of the same people, but a different group as well. So our message gets wider spread, and it's the same message. It's just coming through from different perspectives. So that's really, really important for people to understand. You know, don't think that I necessarily have all the answers or that Laina has all the answers, but together we have some answers that might help you find what are the real answers for you. That's really what I think what we're trying to get people to wake up to here. And the only way you can do that, really, I shouldn't say it's the only way, but one great way of doing that is by, instead of looking out here to find your information, bring yourself in here, into your source, into your essence, into the center of who you really are, because that's where your real truth resides. And you'll come up with your own terminologies and your own words and your own explanations for everything that will make sense to you. That's really what I think we're trying to teach here. And yet, the other thing you mentioned, you talked about when you have an irritation or a trigger of some kind. You're absolutely right. That when that happens to me, that's all about me. It has nothing to do with anything out there. It's all about me. I may associate it with some events that happen outside of myself. And I may, in my ego mind way, I might point the finger of blame and say, you caused me to get angry. You made me mad. That's what we say. Well, not true. You did something, which you do because that's who you are. And I got mad. I chose my reaction. That's more accurate. So people have to learn to take responsibility for their own triggers, their own reactions, their own irritations. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see more and more wars and stuff like that going on. But thankfully, as you say, we are living in a world where ascension is kind of happening. Elevation of consciousness is happening. The frequency is rising and things are changing. So there's that.
Yes, things are changing, and they're changing because we've been changing, and the change has been slow and steady, but you know, we have been for thousands of years realizing. And again, I give Jesus so much credit for being willing to be crucified for the truth that he believed was true, that we all have, you know, the kingdom is within. And of course, he spoke about God. To me, the word God, I actually had to leave the God of the church to find the God of the God that is the truth for me. And of course, A Course in Miracles helped me really cultivate that relationship with God. So words don't matter, like abuela, grandma, that Mimi, whatever anybody wants to be called, doesn't really matter. It's the essence behind that, the truth behind it that we're pointing to is what really matters. And like you said, you know, people will resonate with whatever they resonate. And when we don't resonate with a word, we need to look at, you know, what is this? Because really words should be meaningless. They have no meaning except the meaning we give them. And Consciousness is consciousness. And even that word, some people think, oh, it's so sterile. It doesn't matter what we call it. Buddha, Bambi, Baba, God, it doesn't matter. It knows what it is. So the names are just for our own, what are we comfortable with? But what is so cool about the kids today is that they have this sense of knowingness. I watch it around now, having one grandbaby in a community or two grandbabies in a community filled with lots of kids. I'm watching all these children interacting, and it's really, you can tell by what the kids say and some of their behaviors if they're coming from an environment that is more unconscious or more conscious. There's a natural, those who are raised with fear are a little bit more of a bully with some of the other kids. Those who are raised without being valued, you can tell, they try to control things. But those who are raised with more consciousness are recognizing more of the oneness, the connection, the willingness to collaborate and co-create, and the kindness. So it really is wonderful to see that does move forward, because to get back to the work that we did was to get us back in touch with that part within ourselves that is kinder and gentler, that respects the oneness of all there is. And as a grandparent, it's so fun to watch that flower that already blossomed when these babies were born is not being shut down, that it is staying open, that it is even opening more. Right. And being a conscious grandparent, I'm witnessing those babies allowed to be who they are naturally as God created them, as omnitude expressing through them, and also watching my daughter look at her reactions, look at the parenting she received from me, question the way that she does things, because they're programmed in her mind. And what we consciously, the two of us, are attempting not to do, and I would say her husband as well, is not to program these babies into limitation, but rather the expressiveness that they have provide the kind of guidelines that allow them to understand as early as possible the consequences of choosing certain things, so that they have that as options in their in their mind, so that they know ahead of time, if you choose to be loving, well, these are the consequences. If you choose to be selfish, if you choose to be controlling or in charge, well, it's going to have these consequences. And my daughter tells her son all the time, this is a choice. These consequences are based on your choices. What is happening right now didn't just happen to you out of the blue. You chose to do this, and that's why this happened. And to be able to connect the dots in that way is just so powerful and so beautiful. But as a grandparent, I have a role as a mother still. Mm-hmm. And that is so important to remember as a grandparent, because if you're a grandparent and you really haven't gone on a big journey of awakening, you've got to pay attention to what the parent of your grandchildren are doing, because so much of it is what you program them to do. So it's a really fascinating place to be, observing my daughter and realizing, oh, that's my unconscious programming there. And being able to have the relationship that I have with her is so wonderful, because we can talk about things like that. But right. If you are a grandparent that doesn't have that respectful relationship with your children, it's so easy to want to do things behind their backs, slide them the cookie without their parents knowing, or saying things like, oh, don't, your mom and dad are going to leave soon. We'll watch what we want to watch on TV, or we'll do whatever we want to do. There is a respect that has been cultivated with my daughter, that we trust each other, that we can unpack things as they happen. Sometimes she gets frustrated with the kids, and we'll sit down and talk about it. Where's that frustration coming from? Well, it's coming from impatience. Well, as a source being, patience is one of your characteristics because you're eternal. Time doesn't exist. And we can have those kinds of conversations, and inevitably it'll lead to, well, I'm being impatient because I got to get somewhere. Why do you have to get somewhere? Well, because I promised a client I was going to be there a certain time. Why are you doing that? Well, it's because I'm earning an income. And then we can begin to unpack the things that are external that cause us to react in the moment with our children. I wish I had somebody who could have done that with me so that I could have seen how I valued, money and how the house looked and external things way more than the moments that I could have with my children. And if there is, I only have really like two regrets. One is that I vaccinated my children. The other one is that I didn't spend more time in the now moments with my kids, but my grandbabies give me the opportunity to do that. So I clear my calendar. If they need me, I'm there because I want to be present. So many beautiful things around having this level of knowledge, and being a grandparent is priceless.
Well, you talked about something a while back, a few minutes ago, about communities of children and noticing the difference in behaviors, and understanding that some people come from an environment of fear. And that really stuck with me. I'm thinking, fear is the ultimate destroyer, isn't it? The fear is that energy that creates this illusion of separation to begin with. And the only real fear that we ever experience, I think, is a fear or a fear of the absence of love or connection or consciousness. And that can be expressed in a variety of different ways. And I think that the deepest way that most people describe it, if I ask you, what's your deepest fear? It's usually something about, I'll when I die, I'm going to just be gone. I will cease to exist. I am forever alone and nobody cares about me, kind of thing. That's the kind of fear that is most prevalent, I think, for most people. And yet it's completely false. It's completely false. And it's all based on the ego, the expression of the ego. When we are connected to our soul, to spirit, then we have that infinite connection to all that is, that infinite connection to source, the infinite awareness that we are part of a grand supreme consciousness that can't be described in words. And yeah, it's true that my body may eventually fade away into non-existence, but this consciousness, me being an aspect of all that is, an aspect of God, an aspect of the expression of consciousness, the fact that I am that means that I exist forever, and I have existed forever. I just, maybe my human awareness of it is limited, but my spiritual awareness of it is unlimited. I think that people need to understand that. And my words may not be all that great in expressing it and describing it, but it is the truth to me. It is the ultimate truth. So fear is a completely fake thing. It doesn't really exist. It's only in the imagination, and it's only in the mind of the ego. So if we could come to that understanding, we could begin to stop being afraid all the time, and start living from a place of unconditional love and connection.
Well, and that's where, and I agree with you, and that's where we have to become the change we want to see in the world. Right. And the generation that is now, they're going to be the leaders of the future. So many are involved with more conscious grandparents, but the grandparents still have to do the work with their children, with our own children, and heal some of those wounded places that our children carry. Our children being in the ages, I'm going to say 30s, 40s. There are a lot of those new parents out there who have have been wounded by their own parents, who have been wounded because we passed on to them, do as I say, not as I do. Kids are supposed to be seen and not heard. We squash them in so many ways. We control them. We box them in. And as parents, they think they're coming out of a box. But if their mind is at a level of consciousness that is simply saying, I'm going to do it my way, not the way you told me to do it, from more of a judgmental and a revengeful way.
Right. It's just another box.
Yeah, it's maybe a little bigger box and maybe a little prettier box, but it's still a box. So as a conscious grandparent, the work is not just how are you showing up with your grandkids, it's how are you showing up with your children. And this relationship of trust is only cultivated when we come to our kids, not to tell them, hey, the way you did things with the grandbabies, that was wrong, or I wouldn't do that. Is more about, I have an observation, may I share it? Is to respect them enough to ask for permission to share what we see, and not to tell them, hey, what you did was wrong, but rather, what you did, I can see why you did that. I taught you how to do that. Yeah. That's part of how I raised you, and I did that because I was told to do that. So may I share with you how I changed being that way, how I see it now differently. That permission, seeking permission from our children to share, is really important as we become observers of how the grandparenting or the grandchildren are being raised by our mini me's. And if our mini me's were unconscious, well, they're going to have a level of unconsciousness. And becoming a conscious grandparent is really acknowledging where those grandbabies are getting their parenting from, which is a result of what we did. And that breaking the cycles of unconsciousness is necessary, like you said, if we lose our fears of making our children upset with us, and moving into that place of unconditional love, where we can use everything that is showing up, that is providing a moment of discomfort, that irritation becomes an invitation to unpack things. And I believe that that generation that's in their 30s and 40s now, they're really open. They're way more open than our kids were. And some of them are holding grudges for the kind of parenting that we offered them. And so the opportunity to expand the healing for the humanity that is ascending, really, there's a big role to be played with our own children. Yeah, enjoy those grandbabies all the way, but the healing opportunities with our children is really powerful, because they will remain here long after we're gone, after these body vessels are gone. But what we taught them, the consciousness that we placed in them, will stay. So if we can do some healing, if we can be mature enough to say, please forgive me, I'm watching how you're doing things with your child, and my goodness, I wish I would have been that open with you, or that less restrictive with you, and use those moments as opportunities for addressing things that help them change their mind, and then asking for the forgiveness. Those are powerful opportunities that are, I think, we're being given right now, when we can become more aware of what's taking place and how they respond or they react. If I'm not taking it personally, boy, what a big lesson are we providing right off the bat in showing how we're choosing peace instead of being right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's beautiful. There's so much here, and I think ultimately that's what we're all trying to do, one way or another, is whether we know it or not, I think we're all trying to wake up to the truth of who we really are. I think that some of us have an easier pathway to doing that, and some of us have a greater struggle. We can make up all kinds of stories about why that might be, different incarnations, different karma. We can have all those kinds of conversations. But the fact of the matter is, ultimately, everything boils down to some kind of a choice. I look at my own life now, and I begin to understand that it was important for me to go through my life in the way that I did, so that I could come to the awareness and to the understanding that the only thing that really matters is knowing the truth of who I really am. That's it. That's the most important thing. But beyond that, understanding that, it's also important for me to share that important message to everybody else. So everything I do now is based upon that idea. And so that's why I put together programs like this, so I can try and bring other people on board and keep sharing the message. If we can, I believe, if we can do this more and more, then we contribute to the higher elevation of consciousness, to the increased frequency of the world, and help with that ascension process that you talked about earlier. So I am grateful that you're here to do that, and I'm grateful that I have become aware enough to be able to do some of that as well.
Yeah, it's a fun place to be, definitely, to be used in this way as part of the overall expansion. But the probably, if I had to say something that is so crucial that we understand, more than teaching, more than using our words, it's the being, is the examples that we provide, is it's like they say, people will forget what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And that is such an important thing that I have learned, that to be consistent, to not be the one who points at, oh, you did this wrong, or you should have done this, but be an example of what I'm talking about. Be that presence of, kindness and patience and compassion. Because I can tell my daughter all day long, you're being impatient because of you're putting external things ahead of you. But when I'm the example, when she calls me and says, Mom, something out of the blue, emergency, can you be here with the kids? I let her know I will cancel my appointments. And she knows that's how I make my income. And so she sees that the external world is not going to have priority over what it is that is most important to me. So I don't have to say to her, point it out. It's an evidenced example that we have to be the change we want to see in the world. So I feel so blessed that my daughter wanted me to be a part of the experience with her grandkids. I know a lot of grandparents, their children, they don't want them around that much, because they've got wounds that they haven't healed. And my daughter recognized that there are still some things that could be healed, but she was so open to my presence in her kids' lives that I just feel so blessed.
Yeah,
and it's fun.
Beautiful.
It's so fun.
Well, and speaking of blessings, I noticed that you've got that book behind you. That is the book that, it's got my name on it, but Laina was a contributor in this book. It's called Gifts of Wisdom, Practices for Healing and Empowerment. It's available on Amazon if you'd like to grab a copy. It's got so much great wisdom, and a lot of it from elders in our community, people who maybe are grandparents. I think most of us are. So I would encourage people to go check that out. Laina, what other final beautiful words of wisdom would you like to share with people, drawing upon your amazing journey as a student and a teacher of A Course in Miracles and all the other beautiful, amazing power of awareness teachings that you do? What would you like to share for, your final words?
I would say to take seriously, meaning not heavy, but to heart, do it, is become like a little child, and you will experience the kingdom of heaven. Because when I'm with my little kids and I just, those grandbabies, and I am just there and playing in the moment and in the joy and in the lack of worry about what I'm supposed to do tomorrow, where's the income going to come to pay the rent, they are teaching me. They are my greatest gurus, the greatest gurus I've ever learned from, to just be present. And the more that I apply that in my day-to-day, even in my teaching and my coaching, if I can just be more lighthearted and have fun and enjoy what is happening in that moment, the more present we are. And the more present we are is a present to those around us. And
Absolutely.
It's a gift to them. Talk about the gift of wisdom. So that would be the thing that I would say is let yourself have fun. Let yourself become like a little child. You don't have to wait till you're a grandparent to learn to do that. You can, if you're watching this and you're not a grandparent, learn to be like a little kid now, and grandparenting will just be pure bonus if you already are living in that space. It's so much fun. I mean, it's so much fun. It makes life so much easier to be like a little child, to be joyful and happy and free.
Yeah, and I want to share something about that too, because I remember attending a workshop several years ago where we were invited to embrace our own inner child and start to express that. And I remember how much pain that caused me because I had so much shame about myself as a child. And so it might be a tender place for people to go to be as a little child. But my invitation is take what Laina just said, take it to heart, and remember that if you can bring some love and healing to your own inner child, that can manifest in lots of different ways in your current life and help you to heal all kinds of wounds that you may not even know you have. So I strongly encourage you to do that. And if you need some support, reach out. Laina and I are both available for support if you want some help in that. So please just remember that. So thank you, Laina, for being here. I really appreciate it. It's always a joy to share space with you. And I'm just delighted with the way this conversation has gone. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for creating this platform.
Yes, thank you. You're welcome. And to all of you who are here, thank you for watching this program. And please remember that I have recordings of this and every other episode on my website at MagnifEssence.com. So go check that out. Lots of great stuff there. And before we close out, I want to share with you my life mastery mantra. It's just something that I do every day, sometimes multiple times a day, just a way for me to remember who I really am. And I'm going to invite you to practice this for yourself. It's real simple, 3 sentences, and it goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So thank you all for being here. I wish you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey, and I'll see you next time on Magnificence in Motion. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, everybody.